Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Planning Ahead, Find Out Why So Many Retired People Are Saying These Are the Best Years of My Life. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, and I'm really delighted that you've chosen to join us for our Professional Development webinar series. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Boston University Alumni Association and the BU Development and Alumni Relations Office, and we offer it to our 300,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, the BU Alumni Association is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. This webinar series is actually a new experiment for us. We very much look forward to receiving your feedback via a survey that will be emailed to all of you later today. So for those of you who I know are joining us today from as far away as Salt Lake City, Brooklyn, New York, Miami Beach, Florida, Fairfax, Virginia, Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, please know that we really do value your opinion on this and every program that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker, I've got a couple housekeeping notes that I wanted to go over. First, this webinar is being hosted on the Adobe Connect online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble at all with the audio or visual portions of this presentation, I ask that you please contact Adobe Connect directly, and that phone number is 1-800-422-3623. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions that you might have. We're going to leave quite a bit of time at the end of her presentation to try to get to all of those. And you could submit your questions at any time using the Q&A box that you should see at the bottom of your screen below the slide of today's speaker. We hope to get to as many questions as we can during the webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker for the day, Jill Steinberg. Jill's a graduate from the College of Liberal Arts, class of 1972, and of course we now call that the College of Arts and Sciences here on campus. Jill is joining us today from her home in California, and she describes herself as being somebody who's a real dedicated lifelong learner. In her pre-retirement life, Jill was the director of the Peer Mentor Program and a psychology professor at San Jose State University, as well as a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice in Santa Cruz, California. When Jill made the decision to explore retirement, she quickly found that her psychologist's brain was drawn to the research, both the popular and scholarly literature related to retirement, and she found herself wondering if the publications she found actually matched the experiences that real people were having. This led her to develop her current website project called myretirementworks.com, which she's going to tell you a little bit more about today. Jill, I've really enjoyed working with you and getting this presentation up and running. Thank you so much for the time that you've put into this, and I'm happy to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. So what I'm seeing in front of me is the planning ahead. I don't see the PowerPoint, so I just...
I'll get that up and running right now. Oops.
Okay.
You should see that now. Are your slides available?
They're coming. So yes, my
Great.
slides there. So I'll just start the webinar now, right? So
go right ahead. I'm going to mute my phone, and if you need anything, just let me know.
Okay, so that means the listeners should be seeing the PowerPoint as well, right?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, for that great introduction. And for the rest of you, when you think of successful retirement, what does that make you think? If you're like most people and the research literature, you're thinking about having enough money, looking forward to enjoying your free time, and probably not giving much thought to what your retirement will actually look like. Until recently, 65 had been the age of retirement in this country, a milestone legislated by the Social Security Act of 1935, when life expectancy was 61. Currently, the average life expectancy is closer to 80, and the life expectancy of a 65-year-old man is 84, and a 65-year-old woman is 86. What that means is life in retirement has the potential to be about 20 years. And the funny thing is, in 1935, it was really minus 4 years in retirement. Although the bulk of research deals with financial issues, and having enough material resources to retire is necessary to having a successful retirement. Financial issues are covered amply elsewhere. You can find that literature all over, and it will not be reviewed here. Instead, we will address factors associated with quality of life in retirement, how you live your life, how you fill your time. This presentation is based on the assumption that you've created or are creating the financial resources you need to retire. To address successful retirement, what Jeff just told you is I did a lot of research and started myretirementworks.com, and I will be telling you about that later. Retirement is a privilege only some of us earn. It's a stage of life where we can arrive having earned and learned invaluable resources along the way. Retirement is truly an opportunity to figure out, plan, and do what we want to do, to live life fully without regret. It's your choice which way you want to go. Do you want to be like the people I interviewed individually and in focus groups who are successful in their careers and are now floundering and dissatisfied in retirement because they came to this point having lots of free time, lots of experience, and no idea what to do with themselves? Or do you want to be like the people I interviewed who were successful at their careers and continue to be successful, like Elliot Aronson? Dr. Aronson is one of the most eminent social psychologists. He's in his 80s and retired over 10 years ago when he was going blind. Elliot lives independently with his wife Vera and his guide dog Desi. Elliot continues to have a wonderfully fulfilling and happy life. I'll tell you more about Elliot throughout the presentation, as well as others who are truly enjoying their retirement and saying, these are the best years of our lives. Having a successful retirement is likely the stated or unstated goal of virtually all retirees. The research literature does find that for most retirees, life in retirement is better or the same as it was before. The goal for this presentation is to get you involved in your thinking about and planning for your retirement, regardless of your age or stage in life. The point is, you're never too young to think about retirement, and you're never too old to make it better. The presentation will cover key factors associated with retirement adjustment and happiness, including how men and women are differentially impacted and some issues that affect couples. Some tips for how to approach retirement so that you too can achieve a successful retirement, and some additional resources. By the way, as Jeff told you, I graduated from BU in 1972, earned my PhD in clinical psych from Ohio State in 1978, and was a professor at San Jose State as well as a clinical psychologist in private practice for the next 30 years. Here I am at my office at San Jose State at the age of 34 when my book was first published. I'm currently 63 years old and retired 6 years ago when I was 57. What we thought about retirement when we were in college in the 60s is not what retirement was like historically, and definitely isn't what it's like now. And by the way, number two, in case you looked at my photo and decided to join this presentation based on the dog, I waited to get Herbie until my retirement. Herbie changed my life, and that's a whole other presentation. And if we're all lucky, we may get to hear him bark in the background. I wanted to show you two BU pictures since my BU education has had such a positive influence on my life, as it has no doubt on yours too. The first photo is the five of us co-eds who met at BU. You can see Bonnie is in the middle, and she's holding her old wedding photo, which includes the four of us bridesmaids. Actually, Bonnie sitting next to her is Sharon, and they're both participants in this webinar. Ellen's on the right side, your right side there. Ellen and I have known each other since we were 12, and we went to BU together and made these friends our first semester at BU, and we've stayed close all these years. Oops. The second photo is of the three of us visiting Ellen, who was diagnosed with brain cancer this year and recently died. I'm dedicating this presentation to my dear friend Ellen. This presentation is based on a review of the scholarly research literature, web-based resources, and my research interviewing and doing focus groups with over 60 people. Although my particular sample is not random and is biased towards highly educated, above-average income retirees belonging to a lifelong learners group at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and perhaps represents a more ideal retirement, it is like you, a BU alum. Overall, the primary findings associated with retirement adjustment and happiness include having a sense of control over the decision to retire, having social networks, planning, and being goal-directed. Additionally, retirement can affect men and women differently, and retirement can affect the couple. Having a sense of control over the decision to retire, being able to decide how and when to retire, can affect the person's ability to plan and is correlated with higher levels of self-efficacy, mental well-being, and how well people take care of their health. Here's Patty enjoying her retirement. Forced retirement, on the other hand, is a predictor of adjustment problems and has a negative effect on the retired worker and their spouse or partner. The literature tends to discuss retirement as a discrete point in time. In the past, people dreamed of the life of leisure, playing golf, playing tennis, and bridge all the time. Instead, for many of us, leisure world is no longer the goal of retirement. Not working is no longer enough. With more freedom to spend our time as we choose, we want less stress, we want more meaning, we want fewer obligations, and more joy. For some, retirement takes the form of a second career, part-time work, or an encore career, sometimes to help pay the bills, but often to give back rather than accumulate more wealth. For many, the boundary between work and retirement has become unclear. I'm sitting here wondering, what are you thinking as you look at this cartoon? Maybe life after retirement is the same, except you can dress how you want, or maybe this person doesn't know what else to do except be on the computer. It's kind of funny that I can't hear what you're thinking, so maybe later you'll tell me about your thoughts about this cartoon and other parts of the webinar. Some of the responders in my study were not sure when they exactly retired, so they couldn't say when they retired and when they started working. And other responders who only work a fraction of the time they previously worked and would be considered retired by the literature do not define themselves as retired. Some baby boomers are not simply delaying retirement, they're retiring retirement altogether by starting new careers. According to current employment statistics, the older workforce is growing more rapidly than the younger workforce. And on Monday, Bonnie sent me a link telling me about the Wall Street Journal articles about people retiring and having encore careers. That was this past Monday's Wall Street Journal. Here's Craig. Craig retired from his first career working for the government and immediately started working full-time in his second career. This was the one he always dreamed about in real estate. Only now, in his 60s, is Craig really retiring, and you'll hear more about that. I like to use the word unretirement because for many of us, it's the first time in a very long time that we're actually getting to do some things we want. We have the chance to spend our time freely, and we're not so tired. Some of the literature supports the finding that transitioning into retirement with bridge employment is associated with better physical and mental health in comparison with those people who retire fully. Overall, the literature is consistent in the finding that what really matters most is whether the person perceives the transition as chosen or forced. One word about finances in terms of sense of control. Many of the responders supported the research finding that having a pension helped them make the decision and has helped them feel more in control of their lives and more secure and happy in their retirement. They expressed concern that their children would not have the same secure pension option. One of the more consistent research findings is that retirement tends to be easier for people who are goal-oriented and therefore plan what to do once they have retired. Responders like Cindy, who chose the retirement, supported that this definitely helped them feel good about their decision and gave them time to plan. Several responders who felt like they were forced to retire for reasons such as bad work situations or projects ending expressed that they felt like things changed too fast. They would have liked to have had more time to get ready for this huge change. One responder said he was so busy working or chasing work that he didn't think of retiring. He only thought about chasing work. Additionally, flexibility in goal adjustment and tenacity in goal pursuit, as well as the ability to deal with failure and loss, are consistent predictors of well-being. Elliot Aronson, the retired social psychologist I mentioned, who became blind, moved to downtown Santa Cruz with his wife so that Elliot could walk everywhere. He walks to take his dog to the vet, he walks to get his hair cut, he walks to meet people downtown for lunch, he can walk to his doctors. He moved to downtown Santa Cruz so that he could remain being independent, and he learned to use a white cane, or he can walk with his beloved service dog, Desi. Elliot is able to continue doing his research as well as stay in touch with his colleagues because his computer can read text to him. And after 10 years of giving up teaching because he could no longer see his students, at age 81, Elliot and I just co-taught a social influence course. In the second photo, you'll see Elliot with his grandchildren. He's holding a book. And although Elliot can't read the book to his grandchildren, he sure can tell them great stories. Elliot is definitely an example of a person who's resourceful and flexible and happy in retirement. One participant who is a retired engineer made the comment, which reflected the thoughts of many others, that he planned for retirement and work was merely a nice apprenticeship for going on to this next stage. He said, "My productive life is not over." He expressed his love of learning and that he could always find new things to learn, which makes him feel younger and vibrant. Other responders reflected that what the literature said, that pre-retirees may underestimate the challenges of retirement and wish they had planned more. They expressed that even with goal setting, graduation to this new stage in life can come too early, too quickly. It can be an amazing transition, which takes a lot of time and planning and can even be shocking. Having social networks, staying connected, including social connectedness as well as the internet, are vital at any time in life and definitely in retirement. This is a time in life when people can experience many losses. The retiree's world can shrink, like Elliot's, from ending work, death of loved ones, including pets, from moves, from declining health. Therefore, having and being open to others and staying connected to others in person when we can, or when we can't in person by email, by Skype and Google, are especially important at this stage. One responder, a retired engineer who recently moved to California in his 70s, joined our university group and said that he probably has met more people and made more friends in the last 2 years than he did in his 40 years living and working in New York. Here's a little postscript for that person. When he talked about his retirement in the interview, he discussed that his wife had died and how difficult that transition had been. And then, this is the postscript. After the interview, he let me know that he had met someone and at age 80 had remarried. In some aspects, retirement affects men and women differently. For example, for many women, retirement isn't as satisfactory as it is for their male partners or spouses because retirement may not relieve the burdens of family life. Many women continue to keep family roles such as cooking and caregiving, including for their spouse or partner, their elderly parents, their adult children and grandchildren. For men, leaving a job that was very satisfactory can be associated with a more difficult retirement adjustment than for women. And after retirement, men are typically not as good as women at substituting the social involvements they had when they were working. The transition to retirement can be difficult for couples. Transition to retirement affects marital quality, with the early transition period being associated with conflict and declines in marital quality. Hope this cartoon makes you laugh because things get better. After the adjustment period, being married and retired with some joint leisure activities correlates with happiness. So here, you met Craig before, that's his wife Dusty, they're on a trip. Here, Eric and Lisa, they're out dancing, they're having an anniversary party. And here are Marcia and Claudia, finally in retirement, they're celebrating that they were able to get married. One very accomplished retired engineer said his most important gain in retirement was time with his wife of 61 years, even though being under the same roof, without outside work and with declining abilities, complicates the demands of coexistence. Some of the responders were open about having had to deal with couples issues during retirement. In some cases, like Leslie, it was the loss of her husband and then the loss of her dog. Another woman who retired so that she could take care of her dying husband realized that if anything like that happened to her, there was no one close by to help her. Because of this, she moved from Britain to the United States where her daughter was living. She moved near, but not in with her daughter and her family because she wanted space. She wanted the space to establish her own life and not be seen as someone else's mother. For others, having both people at home all the time has created problems. Many people, especially women, express how much space has been an issue and how they continue to encourage their husbands or male partners to get involved with something meaningful outside of the house. These women felt like their home environment changed in a way that curtailed some of their freedoms. This was kind of interesting. When I first announced that I was going to do this research at our Lifelong Learners, a woman came up to me and started telling me about her sister-in-law who was having problems with her husband because since he retired, he had the expectation that they would both spend a lot more time together and that now they would have lunch together, which means she would cook it. It's funny, when she walked away, a man who hadn't heard that story came up to me and said, "You know, Jill, I'm a retired engineer. My wife's an artist, and she works in our home, and she'll never be able to retire. I think one of the reasons my wife and I are dealing so well with both of us being in the home is that I like to go out to lunch myself." He said, "You know, we got married for better or worse, but not for lunch." By the way, the sister-in-law ends up having an aviary built in their backyard for her husband so that he would at least be out of the house for hours at a time. And for the woman who told me about her sister-in-law, for herself, she said, adjusting to her husband's retirement has worked out very well. She had been concerned because he's outgoing and friendly, but he doesn't have close friends or hobbies except reading. And she was used to being home alone. She could listen to NPR all day long. She was accountable to no one. So now that he's retired, she says she encourages him to go out to lunch with other lifelong learners, to sing and play ukulele, all activities that he can do with other people outside the home. She says she keeps on encouraging him to try new things. And for her, there is a little loss of freedom in her dailiness. They, too, have lunch at 1 p.m., and she doesn't keep the radio on, her NPR, because she knows he doesn't like to have the radio on. On the other hand, she has declining health and says how much she appreciates having her husband around for the companionship. And she's always wanted a dog, and now that he's retired, it makes it possible for them to have a dog. Another retired woman living successfully with her retired husband said it's extremely important that we have separate lives. It's more difficult for him, so it's best that I push him out the door and let him go without me. And it's also very important that we have some joint activities, like the time we spend in our classes and with our grandchildren, and that we take responsibility for each other. At this point in the presentation, we're going to shift our focus to how to best apply this theoretical research information to your situation so that you can create a successful retirement or possibly tweak the one you're having. I'd like you to begin by thinking about what have you done in the past that has worked for you to figure out what to do with your life and career. Some of you might have taken some kind of life career planning or a workshop in college. I started teaching them over 40 years ago at Ohio State, and the basic principles still apply. It's the same process and skills of exploring and self-reflection. Only now we have different resources and different options. Begin by thinking about what is important to you, what is meaningful, and what makes you happy. For those of you who have created a financial portfolio, no doubt you were told to diversify. The same holds true for your life portfolio. You're going to have to create a life portfolio that considers a balance between your work, your recreation, your humanitarianism, your family, your friends, and other commitments. If this way of approaching life seems new or foreign to you, or you want some help applying these ideas to your current life, you can contact Boston University instead of paying a retirement coach up to $250 an hour, or you can email me directly or through my website. That's my email for a direct link, and you'll see it again. You can write directly to me about any questions you have. I'd be happy to hear from you, or you can go to my website, myretirementworks.com. Most retirees, especially women, wish they had planned ahead more for retirement. Those responders like Cindy, who you saw before, felt like they successfully planned for retirement and took 10 years and recommended at least that long. Cindy was a professor at the university, and she changed her position at the university so she could have less responsibility. She started working fewer days a week and started taking classes at the university and doing volunteer work where she lived so she could have something to do as soon as she retired. Other people said 10 years aren't enough, and you should start planning and thinking about your retirement as soon as you start working. For those of you who didn't plan ahead, you can see that efforts can be hit and miss. Working on how to spend the day can be an ongoing issue. There's a new freedom and potential control over one's time. Some responders expressed that they miss the structure of work and yet enjoy the freedom to do what they want. The research says that people need strategies to support achieving one's goals, as well as the ability to cope with the failure of not achieving one's goals. As we said before, this is a life stage associated with inevitable gains and losses and requires strategies like Elliot's, like his seeing eye dog, and technology to deal with losses more effectively. In his book, How Will You Measure Your Life?, Harvard business professor Clayton Christensen, also another recommendation I got from Bonnie, discusses ideas for finding meaningfulness in life, in one's work and relationship. He talks about a resource allocation process that can be used in all stages of life, including retirement. Some responders did find that they missed the respect and meaningfulness that came from the work and have had to figure out ways to get fulfilled. Several people, like Craig, who you saw, and his wife, Dusty, took on leadership positions at our lifelong learnership group. This gave them structure, and it gave them some respect and ways to deal with their time, at least for them. One person, at least for that time, one person recommended rehearsing what to say when others asked, "What do you do?" And the answer, she said, is, "Anything I want." Taking the time to think and the skills to reflect are significant and necessary. Most responders emphasize the importance of being open to people or opportunities or classes, groups, or different philosophies, anything that came along their way in all kinds of places. They said it was their time to seize life and say yes to life, as each new experience can bring new learnings, new joys, new involvements, new relationships, new projects, and of course, new advice. Finding satisfaction may require being especially open to short-term opportunities like a chance to go to the theater or music with others, or a one-time volunteer experience to check out the organization to see if you want to do more with them. Successful retirement takes thought and effort, flexibility, and openness to new people and new ways of doing things. Some of the responders recommended taking on retirement as a project. Observe and learn from other retired people. Like Leslie, who research retirement, she suggests asking other people you know who are retired what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for them. At least visit My Retirement Works and read their stories and the interview with Elliot. Cindy, who cut back on her work, recommended that people do cut back gradually if possible to experiment and ease into the transition, kind of plant seeds before retiring by trying something new, like her volunteer position or a class that you might want to do in retirement so that there can be some continuity. Whatever your plan, be flexible and open to change, including being flexible about when you retire. Some people plan their retirement with their partner or spouse, and sadly, in some cases, like Leslie, their spouse died before either person was able to retire. In that situation, several responders recommended postponing retirement so that one doesn't have to deal with too many transitions or losses or changes at once. Some responders, like Leslie, who have had to deal with major losses and are now enjoying their time, recommended figuring out what elements one wants to have in a day. For Leslie, she plans her day by having the following elements. She has physical activity, social connection, meditation, creativity, and for her creativity can be writing or cooking or going to a music event, and service to others. Leslie, along with most of the responders, supported the research finding that exercise is important. Leslie, as well as others, commented that retirees should simplify their lives, including their housing, to make it easier on themselves. Figure out what's really meaningful and do that. Other responders were not as satisfied because they had not developed the self-awareness skills necessary to figure out what they want to do with their newly created available time. Although they were successful in their long-time work lives, they had not learned how to reflect upon what they were doing to figure out what was working and what needed to be changed. Others made their lives way too busy and had to figure out what was important and how to limit their commitments. One woman said, "I flunked retirement. Without fallow time, I worked too much, then I retired too much. I'm sorry, I didn't take the time to figure out my new identity." This person has needed to learn what many responders recommend. Learn to say no to the things that are not important to you. Realize that this is a time of life when we're slowing down, and it's really important to do just what you want. Many responders suggested that taking on one main interest, a passion, something one loves, and going with it. Giving time to try it out instead of assuming too many interests or obligations at once. The passions can come from your past experience or an interest you've had, one before retiring. It could be from your career, like it was with Elliot's in psychology, or from outside one's work, like Eric. Eric majored in art and architecture in college, then went into early childhood education, and upon retiring is back into working with wood, designing and making children's toys. Or like Paula or Jim Ferris, who are in their 90s, and they met in Hollywood when they were working on films. Jim was an editor, and Paula did the art for the Looney Tunes. Jim started our Lifelong Learners group over 20 years ago when they first retired and moved to Santa Cruz. And additionally, they started and have kept up with a film group they run in their home for over 20 years. Jim says that they do this for the stimulation, the discussion, and potential friends. By the way, Jim and Paula's daughter was the director of the film Little Miss Sunshine, and they enjoy going to the opening. Maurice, who is French and lives in Paris with his wife Rachel, is 91 and is writing his 10th book. And he only started writing once he retired from his work as an engineer. Rachel retired after a 40-year career as a psychologist and is now an art student at the Louvre. There are stories on my website, and it's in French and in English. Taking on new projects can help one figure out how best to use one's time. Projects can be in the form of volunteering. Even though the literature says that volunteering can be especially beneficial at this stage, and is cited as one of the things that makes people happy, finding volunteer work that is fulfilling isn't always easy. There can be a lot of volunteer opportunities, but not necessarily at the level of competence or responsibility the person's used to. Responders said that the most successful volunteer opportunities they found by networking, by asking their friends or peers what they were doing, what was working for them. Cindy, who is a retired psychologist and professor, figured that she would use her passion, children, to figure out what to do. Here she is with her grandchild, and then in her volunteer position, she started working with children who have been abused. Cindy finds this very meaningful but also draining. So she recommends interchanging that kind of intense work with her other less emotional experience, volunteer experience, teaching at the Marine Lab, where she says that children come for a one-time experience and are just totally happy to be there and happy to see her and learn from her. Several responders commented that they felt more appreciated and respected in their volunteer positions than they ever did in their professional roles. And others who moved to new cities used their volunteer positions as an opportunity to learn about their communities, to start connecting with people, and to learn something new. Craig told me that the interviewing focus groups made him realize that he's actually dealing with retirement now, since he's phasing out his second career, which was his true passion. Here you can see Craig. He finds much joy with his wife, Dusty, collecting. They have hobbies like collecting trains and toasters. And now they have more time to travel. They travel on their own, and they also started leading groups for the lifelong learners, a need for many retirees who have the resource to finally travel but have no one to travel with. Craig very candidly said to me at the end of the interview, "Now that I'm retired, I hope I don't die early. I've had some serious medical issues this past year, and I want to keep enjoying my life." Others who figured out how to enjoy retirement are now realizing they're missing something and having to once again determine what they want to do that is meaningful and fulfilling. Some are learning to say no when they no longer enjoying what they are doing and figuring out what next. Many of the responders told me that they joined our Lifelong Learners group at UC Santa Cruz for social connections and making friends, as well as to be involved in a university, which makes it easier for them to be lifelong learners. Most participants made a point of saying how much they liked and valued living in Santa Cruz, as it's a great place for retirement. This supports the research that says one's environment is important for a successful retirement. A large number of participants actually moved to Santa Cruz after they retired. Although some moved because of their grown children or grandchildren, many moved because of the beautiful environment, the temperate climate, and opportunities to get involved, particularly in the sciences, and the great university. And of course, many of us love the ocean and the chance to go kayaking, as I am doing here with my dog, Herbie. I'm about to conclude, and before I do that, I want to tell you that if you want to learn more, all the resources I used to create this presentation are included on my website, and there are lots more resources that you can find there, as well as you can read the people's stories. In conclusion, I'd like to say, although this sample of highly educated, above average income retirees is not representative of all retirees, and perhaps represents a more ideal retirement, the responders are role models of regular people successfully enjoying retirement, and they illustrate some of the significant learning points raised in the research literature. Retirees are largely satisfied with their lives, and for some, this may be the happiest they ever have been. As 90-year-old Maurice Enzer wrote in his stories, "Comme vous l'avez si bien indiqué, cher Gilles, these are the best years of my life. Having a sense of control, being goal-directed, including some strategies to deal with goals and losses, and having supportive social connections are all factors associated with having a meaningful and successful retirement. Retirement, like other developmental stages, takes adequate financial resources, planning, and reflection, and is an ongoing process." The Beatles said it best. I get by with a little help from my friends. Thank you, and here's to your successful retirement. And I really do hope to hear from you. Thank you, Jeff. So now it's up to you, and we can handle some questions.
Jill, thank you so much. I have to say, I think the Santa Cruz board should hire you to recruit people to move to Santa Cruz. It's 30 degrees here in Boston today, so after seeing you kayaking and hear more about your life out in California, I think I'm about ready to come out there and join you. Again, a reminder to everybody, we've got a couple questions that have come through, but you're welcome to use the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen to type those in, and I'll read them over to Jill. Jill, first question that came in, your website, My Retirement Works, that's not a fee-based website or anything like that. All the resources that you've talked about are completely available for free, right?
Absolutely for free. And what's also cool is if you write your story and put it up there, then all your friends and family can see about your life. So it's open for you to read. You can write, it's interactive, you can write responses to the others. And you know, Jeff, I just had this thought that I wish I would have discussed with you before, but of the participants, I assume you'll have all their emails. If people want to give their email, then it's even possible that we could publicize that on the My Retirement Works or through BU so people could chat with each other now that they found each other in this presentation. But mainly My Retirement Works, it's definitely free. It's all just from my love of doing this kind of work, and I decided to do it that way instead of a book, because you figure my books or my articles, how many people read those? This is on the web, and it's, you know, we're up to date now, so it's a way for people to interact and get that information. Thanks for asking about that.
Sure. And in terms of your comment about, you know, if people are interested in connecting with each other, I would say the best bet for that would be, you know, Jill, obviously you've made your personal Gmail email address available here on everybody's screen. I think, you know, I'd say to our participants today, if you're interested in connecting, to either email Jill or you're welcome to email me directly. My email is J as in Jeff, T as in Thomas, Murphy at bu.edu. So that's jtmurphy at bu.edu. Another question, Jill, for you. You know, obviously you talked quite a bit about, you know, the primary findings of your research, and I'm curious to know, you know, what about, not to get too personal, but what about your own retirement has been a surprise for you? I certainly know that you spend a lot of time thinking about it. You know, if you had the chance to go back 10, 20 years and do some things differently, you know, are there things that you felt like you had oversight over or a lack of oversight? What are the things about your own retirement that have surprised you the most?
Okay, so this could also take hours, but I'll brief. You know, the slide about forced retirement, I'm kind of in the side of forced and chosen. I retired a little early for myself because I was tired of some of the politics at the university. So I retired, and I hadn't done all this research that I've done now. So what came as a surprise, actually, is as a person that worked so hard, as you said, I worked at the university, I had a private practice. I felt like I was one of those 24/7 people. When I was stepping into retirement, I hadn't planned enough, and yet I still enjoyed it. I did take a little detour. I was trying to figure out what to do with my psychology, and I thought I had a new interest, music. Maybe I would be able to do something related to psychology and music, and I started volunteering in classrooms, working with students in jazz classrooms. Anyway, that took a detour, and then I realized my psychologist mind really needed to be more involved, and that's when I started this project. But it really was a surprise how well I took to retirement. There's something to having free time. And on the other hand, I'm a person who has always been self-reflective and thinks about how to change my life and what I want. That's what was so different from me and many of the people I retired. They got there, and it was really like a blank slate that they didn't know what to deal with. But for me, I guess I had no idea how nice it is to wake up in the morning and not necessarily have to rush to work. I used to be on the bus by about 6:30 in the morning, and even in California, that's not fun. So I got a dog, that's Herbie, and he changed my life partly because Okay, so here's another little thing about me. I'm actually really an introvert. So here I had this whole world open, and yeah, I had classes to take, and then I started my research, but still there was my neighborhood and going out. And Herbie is the type of dog that people want to talk to. So it got me connecting in a different way in the world. Anyway, like I said, I could go on more, but some of the basics right there. I actually, in retirement, have been able to see my friends like Bonnie and Sharon. They still live on the East Coast with you. And so I've gotten to see people that are important to me more with my free time. So that has been a really special surprise.
Great. Personally, I love hearing about you and Herbie, so don't feel like you need to stop talking about Herbie at all. We got another question, and I'll just remind people one more time, feel free to type in your questions using the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. We've got a question from Warren. Warren's wondering, Jill, what do you think of AARP's Life Reimagined initiative? I'm actually not familiar with that, but any comments on the Life Reimagined initiative that AARP is going through?
I'm not sure I know it either, so I don't know if he could tell us more, or if he would email me, I will read about it and give a private response to him. I don't know the Life Reimagined initiative, and I'm always glad to hear new things. Can Warren tell us anything more?
Warren, if you want to type in another question, feel free to go ahead with a little bit more follow-up. But other than that, I think, Jill, that's great that you're willing to answer. Warren's typing in that he's going to go ahead and email you, Jill.
If Warren wanted to tell us something, I'm happy to hear what he thinks. And while he's typing, I remembered one other thing about the retirement that has really helped me. By taking on this project of interviewing people and doing focus groups, it's funny. Everything feels like I'm back in college now, which is a great feeling, including I just resurrected my French from college, which is why I read that little statement in French. That was actually for Bonnie, since we were in French class together back at BU. But anyway, interviewing people helped me a lot to figure out how to use my retirement and what to tell other people. And plus, it got me to know other people. So Leslie recommended that she had done that as a project before she even retired. She interviewed people. So I'd recommend that for any of you. If you want to make new friends or just get to know people briefly, it's an interesting conversation that the person can get as personal or not personal as they want, and then it could lead to other conversations.
Great. Jill, we've got a question coming in from Gail that I'm going to go ahead and guess might be out of your area of expertise. It's sort of a logistical question around real estate. Gail's question is, should you sell your house first and rent in the area that you think that you want to relocate to, or do you buy your house in the new area and then sell your primary house? And again, feel free to, if this is outside your wheelhouse, let us know. But if you want to take a stab at that, Gail's interested to hear what your thoughts are.
I do have some answers, not based on my experience, but based on responders like Jim and Paula Ferris. And it was remarkable to me how many people in their 70s and some even in their 80s moved. That just seemed like a really difficult task, but they did it. But anyway, several responders told me that they traveled around the country looking for the place they wanted to live, and then many of them actually had already thought about Santa Cruz. But Jim and Paula, for example, owned a house in Southern California, and they came and rented here first because they wanted to make sure they were going to like it here and that they could figure out which area to live in. So if you can afford it, based on my responders, they would say experiment first. Try moving somewhere, renting, before you make that big investment.
Great. Jill, we're about running at the end of our time. I want to remind everybody, if you have a follow-up question for Jill, she's obviously more than happy to get personal emails from you at jillasteinberg@gmail.com. Jill, thank you so much for your time today. I know from our conversations over the past few months just how passionate you are about helping people have happy and successful retirements. And I also know how much time you put into preparing for this presentation today. With the recording of this webinar, I know that you're going to have a positive impact on hundreds of BU alumni around the world, and I can't thank you enough for your time. My thanks also go out to all of our guests for participating today. I hope you had a good experience with this program and found some value in it, and that you'll think about joining us for our next professional development webinar, which is coming up on Tuesday, January 14th, 2014. In our next session, BU College of Arts and Sciences alumna Carly Goldberg is going to present her session called Kickstart Your Career in 5 Simple Steps. As always, if you or any BU alumni you know would be interested in presenting a webinar like this for the BU Alumni Association, feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office, or go ahead and email me directly at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. Hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Goodbye.